Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World of Cinematics today. Today, we're going to be discussing The Last Jedi, specifically just different points of view. For instance, I'm going to talk about my perspective of The Last Jedi, which isn't necessarily the most positive reception. Brendan was very neutral when he saw the film, and Jed was very pro Last Jedi. And the reason I wanted to do a discussion like this was to actually have a discussion. When my whole family saw The Last Jedi for the first time, we had a lot of different opinions. And some of the worst fights as an adult in my family, specifically with my brothers, occurred because of this film. And it's pretty embarrassing looking back at it how personally we made it, and that tends to be the trend on YouTube specifically about this film is if you like it, you're a fool, or if you don't like it, you're a rube or something. And so I came up with this idea that we would just have everyone give perspective. We'd be asked a series of questions on how we felt about it, because at the end of the day, if the argument is, well, you're a fool or you're not a fool, or you have no taste, or you don't understand storytelling, or you don't understand character, those sort of arguments don't work for me. I kind of wanted to get to the root. Why does Jed like The Last Jedi? And maybe it's not so much for me, but for an audience to see just a positive point of view. Why does he like The Last Jedi? Why do I not like it? Why was Brendan sort of indifferent? And I was listening to Jordan Peterson today. He made a good point that when you have a discussion with your wife, are you going into it to win an argument, right? Because if you're going in to win an argument, that'd be great if you didn't ever have to see your wife again. But the fact that you'd have to see her the next day means that you'd have to be willing to deal with the repercussions, maybe even for 2 weeks. And he said, do you want to be the tyrannical king who knows everything and is right about everything? Or do you want to be the fool who learns? Somebody who's constantly learning and getting better every day. And I'd rather be a fool who learns and comes to a new understanding every day rather than a tyrannical king who thinks he knows everything. So the purpose of this isn't to prove one way's right or one way's wrong, but rather to have a deep conversation going into how we feel about the film. And it's to be cordial, to be polite, it's to listen, and it's to learn. And we don't necessarily have to agree on everything, but we also don't have to make character attacks either. That was the point of having this discussion today. So that's a little brief intro. I compiled 10 questions, which Robert will read off. Most of them are for the general three of us. A couple of them are specifically for Jed. And whenever Jed likes, he can chime in on any questions or insights that he might have on his own. So I'll hand it over to you, Robert. You've got the 10 questions, and you're going to make sure we behave and are cordial and everything else.
Oh, all right, sounds good. I think I could do this. So just so everyone knows, you won't be able to see me because I have it specifically set to watch the speakers. Because I'm just a moderator here. And the first question we're going to go start off with is, what was your initial reaction to The Last Jedi?
I guess we could start with Jed.
That's a good question. Yeah, who's going to be starting? Jed, do you want to go?
Jed, and you put Brendan, and then me.
I can go. I can go first. How quickly are we going to take with these questions?
Let's try for as long as you want for now.
Okay, as long as I want. I will say, when I walked out of the movie, my first thought was, what on earth did I just watch? I don't want to say mixed feelings, but it was such an overwhelming experience that there was a lot. I'm like, I'm not sure how I'm going to take this. This movie was really the movie that for me established my rule of I try not to have hard takes about a film until I've at least seen it twice. Is like I walked home from this movie theater with a friend, and it was a long walk, and we were talking about the movie, and there was the sense that we both really liked it, but there was a lot of like, I think I really liked this, but I don't know. I might hate it. And I remember I finally got home and I just like laid down face first in the couch and just like for like 5 minutes, just, oh gosh, this is a lot. This is big. I don't know. A few days later, I think it was like 2, 3 days later, I was talking with my sister and she did not like Force Awakens. I said, hey, let's go watch the new one. I think I really like it. I'm not sure. I think you will love it. I think you'll love it more than me. And I don't know, she ended up liking it about as much as me. But yeah, that initial walking out for the first time, not mixed, but confused.
All right, I guess it's my turn.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, for me, it was the first Star Wars movie I'd seen in theaters since
2005.
actually the Clone Wars movie.
Oh, God.
But an actual like opening crawl Star Wars movie.
Mhm.
That's the Revenge of the Sith. When I was a kid there. So for me, that alone was making it cool. I didn't have the Force Awakens experience
Mhm.
to just like, oh my gosh. I mean, my Force Awakens experience was The Last Jedi for me in that sense. That it was the first Star Wars movie I had seen in a long time. And I remember thinking it was good. I thought it was a little long. I thought there were parts of it that were not necessary or a little preachy, like the whole the horse racing thing.
Mhm.
But it was just like, okay, whatever, who cares? There was a cool part at the end with Luke Skywalker, and honestly, I think my first impressions, I did like it, if I'm remembering correctly. I did like the movie, and I enjoyed it. So, and I've actually come to this conclusion that I'm neutral about it, in more recent years, and after seeing how the story tied up with Rise of Skywalker, that's really what kind of brought that whole trilogy down for me about a letter grade. So, no fault of this movie, but my initial impression was that I liked it. Yeah.
I'd say Jed and I have found common ground already. I think the word overwhelmed cannot be understated here. I was seriously overwhelmed. The first film I was ever overwhelmed with, I think, was possibly The Dark Knight, just because it packed a lot of heavy stuff for me at the time as a teenager. That being said, my initial reaction was, I think it's better than The Force Awakens simply because Luke Skywalker has a presence in the film instead of being a MacGuffin. And I remember saying that specifically to Aaron. I think it's better than The Force Awakens because of that. But as I was just thinking during dinner and afterwards, everybody had said that they had liked it, specifically Aaron, Jed, Brendan, and so I was just during dinner. I was just sitting with this heavy feeling like Luke Skywalker is dead, and I was like, well, now what? This is the thing I'd looked forward to since I was a child, and I there's a massive feeling of emptiness because my hero was dead, and I didn't know how to cope with that because very rarely do people have the cojones to kill off a big lead, especially someone as iconic as Luke Skywalker. So it was very heavy, very overwhelming. But that was my initial reaction.
Okay, all right. So, any last thoughts?
Off the top of my head, I just want to piggyback off something Brendan said. Brendan said this was his first, Star Wars movie since Revenge of the Sith that he'd seen in theaters. This was my first Star Wars movie I'd ever seen in theaters. Growing up, my family, I've seen maybe 10 movies. We didn't go to see movies all that often. So this was, a Force Awakens experience for me, not just in the sense of Star Wars is back, but also I had never been to see a blockbuster on opening weekend before, so I had a lot of expectations, and I don't know if that made the experience better or worse for me. This has been a movie where since then I've tried to go in without expectations. You'll have expectations, sure, but try and set them at the door when the movie starts.
That's actually a great time to transition to our next question. The next question is, how many times did you see the movie in theaters?
All right, am I taking this one from the top as well?
Yep, Jed, you're
Okay.
starting us off.
Okay, I watched this movie 7 times in theaters. First on the opening day on Friday. Then a few days later with my sister, I think it was a Monday or Tuesday, I don't remember. Then again with my family, then 4 more times over the course of that next semester. Now, part of that was it's a long movie, and I wanted to be out of the apartment. We had an annoying roommate who shall remain nameless, and so this was a good way for me to not be there, just be somewhere else. But I saw a lot of movies that semester. There's a reason I did keep going back to this one. So it wasn't just because I didn't want to be at the apartment. Part of it was, only time I had ever gotten to see Star Wars on the big screen, but the main reason was the more times I watched it, the more I liked it.
All right. Well, for me, I think I watched it twice. I watched it once, and then I told everyone it was good, it was great. And I really did like it, because parts of it reminded me of just the whole mission of them going off and Poe telling them to go to a random planet to get a dude that can hack the First Order's Star Destroyer or whatever. Like, I was like, oh, this is kind of like a mini Clone Wars episode, and I'm a huge fan of Clone Wars. I grew up with that. So I was like, oh, I kind of connected those dots, even though the movie really subverted that sort of ending, because them doing that ended up being their downfall. When they gave away their position and all that. But I remember watching it twice, and I remember going to it the second time, and that's when Stephan saw it for the first time. I remember just going out of the theater and like, oh, it's cool. I was like, what do you think, Stephan? He's like, Luke's dead. And I was like, oh, but it was cool though, right? Yeah, he wasn't as excited as I was, and that's the first time I didn't even think people would think it was controversial. I was on a high of like I said, my first movie, and I enjoyed Force Awakens for the most part. So at the time,
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go related, but not necessarily the same question. But I saw it one time in theaters, but I've seen the film a total of a dozen times, mainly because there was the accusation out there that if you were unwilling to see it more than once or twice, that you didn't, you couldn't really have an opinion. And so I have seen the film a dozen times, but I only saw it once in theaters.
Okay. And I take it this is kind of those questions you don't really need to have another row about. Next question is going to be, would you say the film is important to you? And Jed, feel free and start us off.
I would absolutely say it's important to me. It's important to me as a Star Wars fan, because I think that, as a Star Wars movie, it really upped the game in terms of filmmaking, in terms of, not just being bold, but necessarily bold, especially after the safeness that was The Force Awakens. And, just personally, the story of many of the characters of Luke, of Kylo Ren, of Rey, even Rose Tico, they were meaningful to me.
all right. What was the question? I'm sorry, I was getting caught up in the answer, Jed. What was the question?
So the question is, would you say the film is important to you?
I would say no. Like, I don't think about it on a daily basis or anything. Luke wasn't my favorite character, so they didn't ruin Luke or whatever. I'm not in love with the storytelling. I did really like at the time, and I still kind of enjoy the whole Luke redemption. I really like redemption stories. And upon further analysis, I've thought about how Luke may or may not make sense if not doing anything on the island. So that kind of puts some shade on it, but it doesn't bother me too much. Like, I'm talking like it bothers me, but not a whole lot. So it doesn't matter too much to me.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. We recently rewatched the prequels, and I realized that the reason that specifically the first and the second film, uh, why they don't bother me like they bother some people is because they're not as important to me as, say, Revenge of the Sith. Because Revenge of the Sith, rewatching them all, I thought, wow, this one has, at least it has a punch, it has an impact, it has something important to say. Whether you like that message or not, I don't think anyone here will deny that that one is easily the most impactful of those three. And I would say the same thing about The Last Jedi. I may not agree that it's important for the same reasons that Jed does, but I would definitely say it is important, unlike something like The Rise of Skywalker, which I find inoffensive and meh at best. It doesn't have anything important to say. I don't care about it. It doesn't keep me up at night because it didn't challenge me. But The Last Jedi did challenge me. And so it is an important film to me because it was the first film, Star Wars film, that had an impact on me since Revenge of the Sith.
An impact as in
It challenged what I thought. It made me think. It wasn't just a good time at the movie theaters, which The Force Awakens and to a certain extent the original, the first two prequels were sort of just, oh, this is here, this is backstory, but it's really not that important. Revenge of the Sith hits at the heart of the issue. And I think The Last Jedi is the only film in the sequels that hits at the heart of an issue. The others are sort of just fun time at the movies.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess Rise of Skywalker would be more important to me just because I think it ruins, you know, it not only ruins its own trilogy, but it ruins the original and the prequels in a way. So to me, I guess that's most important, but I think I know what you mean by most impactful
Mm-hmm.
because it like tries the most daring things like Revenge of the Sith, they kill little kids, and stuff like that. And this one, Luke's not doing Luke things or whatever, or the whole subverting expectations.
Sure.
So I
Now,
think
I do have a question to kind of go off of this, and maybe we'll create some good discussion. Now, as far as storytelling goes, what are your thoughts? Like, how has that helped, or not helped? How has that impressed upon you storytelling in general? Because Jed likes it, and he's told me a few times it's about the story itself. There's stuff in it that is good, and then Stephan, you've told me that there's stuff in there you didn't like. So, what has impacted you as far as storytelling goes?
Are we talking about storytelling in general or like specific events in the story?
What about this movie has helped shaped your view on storytelling? I think it's a better way to explain it.
Okay, yeah. So the my biggest takeaway from this movie is that if I'm going to be, I don't want to say if a plot is going to be good, but if I'm going to be invested in a plot personally, then the plot has to be motivated by characters, by their actions, not by you know, the plot shouldn't be like watching people play chess. It shouldn't be, oh, well, they've moved the knight to b12, so the most logical thing for me should be to move my rook here. Well, it's not even b12 on a chessboard. That doesn't matter. It's it should be like, I'm angry, and so I will do this. I'm hurt, so I will do that. That sort of thing. That's just my take on it. And for me, I think this movie did a really good job of you understand why every character made their decisions, even if they weren't always the right ones.
All right, Stephan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh,
You guys are muted for me.
or can you hear us?
can you hear?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah. Now we can hear you.
Yeah. On storytelling with The Last Jedi, I guess I'll try to say something that I liked and something I didn't like. There was something that was important to me because, in the brief research I've done on the making of the film. A big part of the story, obviously, is Luke and his interactions with Rey on the island, and and this goes in the hand with a thing that I liked and a thing that I didn't like so much. Ryan Johnson compared Luke to King Arthur. And we know the story of King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone and becoming the king. Very few of us know about his descent, where he loses everything, where he loses his wife, he loses the trust of his best friend, and he actually goes to war with him. And eventually it's revealed that he has been deceived, usually by the character Mordred, and he has to go and fight Mordred, and he wins, but he's mortally wounded. And he, he makes the promise that he will return again from the lake where the Lady of the Lake resides, and that he will redeem England and bring Camelot back, essentially. And so that is something that I've come to appreciate with Ryan Johnson. He wasn't approaching Luke as just some old wise sage, but rather a disillusioned, like King Arthur, a disillusioned king who has lost everything, has lost the trust of certain relationships. He's lost confidence in his ability to do what he's always done, which is be the hero. The thing that I don't like very much is, his version of the hope to come to redeem Camelot in England, in this sense, is, well, the idea of Luke Skywalker. It's just the idea of Luke Skywalker standing in front of the First Order, but he's gone, but the idea is going to motivate people and inspire people. I don't really like that very much if you're going to compare it to Arthur, because I always like the idea, like, why haven't we ever picked up the story of Arthur? Why hasn't anyone ever said, well, let's have Arthur come back. Let's have him be manifest in the flesh. Because I feel that story is basically the story of Christ, and that it's not just a nice idea that Christ existed, but that he will come again. And that's the comparison that I didn't appreciate that aspect of it. I thought, why can't he be back in the flesh? And it leads into something else that is a pet peeve of mine, is that Lucasfilm, specifically Dave Filoni, set things up so that Ahsoka would return. And Ahsoka was nobody until 2008. Everyone hated her, and then everyone loved her. And they bent over backwards to bring her back. I thought Luke Skywalker is either the first or the second most famous character in Star Wars, only next to Darth Vader. And why aren't we bending over backwards to try to bring him back? Why can't he be, back in the flesh? So that's an aspect of the storytelling that I do like and do appreciate the challenge. And I don't like the idea that he's just an idea now. And I would have preferred him to just be there. There's, just one more thought. But the positive of that is a phrase from Marcus Aurelius, which is, and this is something I think Ryan Johnson was trying to do, was happy is the man that makes others better, not merely when he is in their company, but also when he is in their thoughts or in their hearts. And I think that's what Ryan Johnson was trying to do, but I still don't quite agree with that decision. Like I said, I would prefer Luke to have an active role. I think Colin Trevorrow would stand by me with that as well. He wanted Luke to live. He had plans for him, but he was overridden, and they had creative differences. And I can relate with Colin Trevorrow on that front.
Okay. Brendan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I haven't answered the question, so I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you disappeared for a second, so I was like, okay, wait, did he answer? I can't remember.
Yeah, I was plugging in the computer. So this story, I guess, for me, just like looking at it at a marketing or just a creator's perspective, when people don't like your story, because that's just going to happen. And Ryan Johnson, there's that famous YouTube clip where he said, if a movie makes half of the people love it and half the people hate it, that's the movie I want. And maybe that wasn't his goal with The Last Jedi, but that's what he said years ago in an old YouTube video. And that's what he got, half and half, about, more or less, can't really tell. Loved it and half hated it. But like just his reaction sometimes to people, not liking it and calling man babies and stuff. Like, I'm not going to talk much about that because that's obviously not just the movie, but just from that point of view, just you got to accept that people aren't going to like your stuff, and that's just a fact. Twitter's a cesspool anyways, so anything you say on there is not going to be good. But from a story standpoint, I really think that the thing Stephan was talking about with Luke being an idea to inspire people, I think that might have worked better had it been better followed up in The Rise of Skywalker. But it really, the galaxy gets united from Lando going from system to system or whatever he did. It wasn't because Luke was a hero. That's what bothered me about just that whole story arc. So I think it could have been worked out better, but they just didn't follow up on that. And Luke is kind of in the shadows and the rest of the trilogy. So I would say from a story standpoint, they just need to follow through. I know that's not specifically Last Jedi's fault, but that's just my point of view.
Right. And yeah, just to go off of that, yeah, it's hard to separate Last Jedi as a film from Last Jedi as an installment as a trilogy, because it took things that were going on in Force Awakens and then took them in a left turn, which I understand when some people say like it was the wrong decision, it didn't work, all that stuff. I get it. And so for some people it was very disjointed. And then Rise of Skywalker, it's not that it took things from Last Jedi and took a left turn with them. It just abandoned things from Last Jedi. Like, Luke is this inspiration to the galaxy. They're going to stand up because of him. Never mentioned in Rise of Skywalker they do that because of Lando. So yeah, it is difficult to separate Last Jedi as a film and Last Jedi as a part of a story. I do want to follow up on something you said there. I'm going to criticize Rian Johnson before I defend him. I find it very entertaining to be on Twitter. Twitter brings out the worst in people, and people, especially creators, should not be on Twitter. David Lynch, one of my favorite directors, he said, I don't remember the exact wording of it, but a creator should never comment on his own film or his own art or whatever, because part of the experience of art isn't just the art, it's you experiencing the art. And so if you were to come in to say, this is what it is, well, you're taking away half the experience. So I think, if I were Rian Johnson, I would use Twitter sparingly to say like, oh, hey, I got this new movie coming out, that sort of thing, not to go on and interact with, well, I think interacting with fans is okay, or people who didn't like is okay, but interacting in a way to like, let me explain, the movie to you. I cannot defend that, not in a moral sense, but in a filmmaking sense. I do want to point out, though, a lot of people make a big deal out of him calling people man babies. This is something I'm actually going to defend. In all of his usage of Twitter, which is very frequent, he's said man babies 4 times. The first time was somebody said like, oh man, I really love Carrie Fisher in The Last Jedi, and someone started attacking her and saying like, oh, you're terrible, you're stupid. And all he did to respond to this person was, to the person who had talked about Leia, don't feed the man babies. And then the second time was, somebody's father died, and this person started attacking him because he liked Last Jedi. He's just like, hey, I'm sorry, man. I know when I interact with people, it brings out, Pepe bots and man babies. It's just things like that. The last time he did was, this is what we're talking about when we talk about man babies. And he was talking about people who chased Kelly Marie Tran off Twitter. Not Twitter, Instagram. I won't repeat what they said, but he said something here, that the reason why I was going on this tangent, he said something here that I wish he stuck to more often. I think it's something that we need to stick to more often, both we generally as fans and even sometimes we personally. He said, on social media, a few unhealthy people can cast a big shadow on the wall, but over the past 4 years, I met lots of real fellow Star Wars fans. We like and dislike stuff, but we do it with humor, love, and respect. He's including people who didn't like Last Jedi in that. He, like, you don't like Last Jedi? Cool, great, let's talk about it. Let's have fun with it. Let's be respectful. We're the vast majority. We're having fun and doing just fine. The man babies are the people who treat people terribly on either side, who say, you didn't get the movie, you're stupid, you're awful, you're not a Star Wars fan. Or the people who say, You liked it. You're a terrible person whose father deserved to die. And so, yeah, this whole thing here, this is what we should be doing. This is something that is healthy. This is good.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. That being said, he should totally stop being on Twitter. It's not a good look.
No, yeah. Because then people can take it out of context, and then
Exactly.
I learn about it, and then I'm like, oh wait, then you tell me, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's not all that bad,
Right.
But it's just I saw some similarities between like the Last Jedi and the Last of Us Part 2. Just the creators kind of getting a little too defensive.
Right.
But if it's standing up to bullies who are just being jerks, that's fine. But if it's oh, you don't like women or whatever, I don't know.
And Ryan Johnson has done some of the stuff. Like somebody will make this long post about like why Luke doesn't work for X, Y, Z reasons, and he'll respond for why it does work on X, Y, Z reasons. I find that interesting to read. Not the sort of thing he should be doing. The art should stand on its own.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to read a book to understand why your movie is good, like to fill in the plot holes. Right. A little bit of plot holes, but
you can learn interesting things, but they shouldn't only work because of those things.
Yes, Robert.
So for the sake of time, we may have to move on.
Okay, yeah, we'll move on.
So the next question would be, would you say that some of the themes such as letting the past die and failure is the greatest teacher resonate with you?
Absolutely. It's something that, without getting too personal, is really made a big impact on my life, just, partially because of when it came out and the things I was going through then. But really, it's something that, whether or not it was accomplished well, I think it is a universal theme. It's just, bad things happen and you can't ignore them like Kylo Ren wanted to. You can't just, let the past die. You can't be kind of like Rey was wanting to do, where it's like, oh no, the past, I have to have it. I have, please give me everything. And I find in many things in life, you do what Yoda says, you're going to be okay. Just learn from it. You have to move on. Don't ever forget it, but move on and keep moving forward.
Okay.
All right, Brendan.
To me, let the past die. I don't know. Some people it makes them really mad, but for me, it's the bad guy saying it, so obviously you can't take it seriously. From my point of view, I mean, there can be some truth to what a bad guy says at the same time, but to me, it's just like, oh, the bad guy said it, and when are bad guys right? And I also thought he was lying about Rey not having parents, and in retrospect, I wish he didn't, because what they gave us was worse. So, and what was the other one? Let the past die and
failure is the greatest teacher.
Failure. Yes, it's failure. Yeah, that one made sense to me. It resonated. It's like, yeah, failure teaches you that you're doing it wrong. I mean, if you keep on failing, maybe you should go out and seek some help. Teachers are pretty good teachers too. But I get it. It's just like it's a metaphor or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's cool, I guess.
I think the first part, let the past die, because the second part is kill it if you have to. I don't agree with the second part. We have too many people who want to obliterate the past, even if it's not even their own personal past. And that, I don't think that's good. But, letting the past die, what does that mean? And I think I agree with Jed on it's the negative aspects of the past, And I don't know that you have to shish kebab the past, you don't have to kill it per se. But if you feed the past and you live in the past, that's what keeps the past alive. But moving forward, like Jed suggested, is letting the past die because it has no nutrients, it has no way to, keep feeding itself. You move forward, and out of the context of the film, it's not necessarily a bad lesson, I don't think. So in a way, it does resonate. Allowing the past not to keep you chained to it, but rather moving forward. despite it. And then the other part, failure is the greatest teacher. I would, if failure is the greatest teacher, then success is the greatest motivator. And I think if those two things are true, then they go hand in hand, and that makes sense. Because sometimes you can just fail your whole life at something. I mean, you can be a big failure. I think you have to have some success in order to truly learn. But I think failure is a good teacher. I don't know that it's the greatest teacher, but I think there is some truth to the idea that it's important that you confront failing without letting it cripple you.
All right. And any other thoughts on that question?
Huh?
Yeah. All right. And now for number 5. So we have 10 questions. We are halfway through now. And this question, remember, you don't need to get too personal, but did this film help you make decisions of a personal nature regarding certain relationships in your life? In other words, did this film's message and themes, particularly for Kylo Ren, on moving forward and being your own man, reach out to you? Yeah, go
This
ahead,
one,
Jed.
Jed specifics, but if anyone has thoughts on it, feel free after his response.
I think watching the film, I identified a lot with Kylo Ren, more than any of the other characters. Not that I want to be a fascist, but the I don't know if it taught me lessons of things to do, but watching it, I see how I do feel very much like this character in a lot of ways, and it showed me, okay, you may feel like this, but that doesn't mean it's okay to do this, or you feel like this, be careful, this may lead you to do this. I think the character that I took more lessons from was even though I didn't identify with him as much, was actually Luke. This idea of you know without going into too much, when is it time to cut yourself off from people, or to cut certain people out of your life? When is it time to go back? When do you have hope to that things will get better? When do you say, you know what, this can't get better, or it may get better, but it's not worth the danger, and so you have to move on? There's a little bit of Ray in that in there as well. And so it's I would say yes, it affected me in a very personal way, but a way that I don't know if it was, I mean, maybe the impact of it was because of how I view the quality of the film, but the meaning and direction is, I would say, not connected to the quality of the film and just the content of the film.
All right. Do you guys have any thoughts, Stephan and Brendan?
Sure. The reason I formulated that question and made it Jed specific is, for those of you who don't know, he is all the, what do you call the little bobbleheads in our room?
Funko Pop.
All the Funko Pops on Jed's side of the shelf are all sequel related, Star Wars sequel related. And I've got a mix of Legos that are original trilogy and prequels. And a lot of every time we do paintings or anything in a group activity for family home evening, Jed is always painting a picture or an image from The Last Jedi. And to me, I just thought those observations and other things, his background pictures on his laptop, as the years have gone on, I'm like, this is really important to me. This film it's not just something he enjoyed, but it's something that really reaches out to him, and it must have had some kind of impact. So that's the reason I formulated that question specifically for Jed. I figured there's more than average importance when it comes to films. Otherwise, why such devotion or admiration for the?
Yeah, I will say, just in terms of Star Wars movies, it's up there, but it's not my favorite by any means. But it is definitely the one that did have the biggest impact on my life.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I just to add my part. For me, this movie, I really liked the Thor movie, the first Thor movie, because it really showed Thor get humbled, and when Loki goes to him, with when Thor doesn't have his powers and Loki visits him in the Shield prison. And then Thor just feels he's at his lowest moment. It's horrible, it's awful. And then Thor gets redeemed, and he's humble enough to let himself be killed to save the town. That just meant a lot to me. And when I watched The Last Jedi the first time, and Luke going out and fighting the First Order, that I kind of drew similarities in that, and I really saw Luke as like a hero, and the whole redemption thing I was talking about earlier. That's that I really like that sort of storytelling. So, but I know, to answer Stefan's question, I didn't make me cut ties or anything.
All right. And now for the next question, unless there's any other thoughts you guys want to add to that. No? All right. So next question, number 6. Let me transition. Okay. What are the best aspects of the film? So this is a more positive question. I'm excited to hear this one.
Okay. I'll start out with, I think the filmmaking is great. The editing, all that, the score. I think it fits with Star Wars universe and lore. There's a lot of small background things, like the nature of the space battles scene. I think it takes, all these nitty gritty little details from the expanded universe, from video games, from movies, and I think it did a good job of compiling them into meaningful ways. If you're like, oh, well, why did this ship do that? Or why did this do, like, oh, well, as seen before here, it works here. I think it's bold, necessarily bold, like I said earlier. And I think what it did with the characters, most of the characters anyway, I'll save some of that for critiques later, is most of the characters, they were able to be challenged in meaningful ways. They drove the plot in meaningful ways, and they changed in meaningful ways.
Okay. I would say it definitely challenges a lot of things. But in terms of good things, it has really good special effects right off the bat. My favorite thing about this would probably be the crate battle. Yeah, that's probably my favorite part of this movie. The crate battle. It's cool.
For me, the best aspects of the film are, one, Mark Hamill's performance. By far, is some of the best acting we've seen in Star Wars, and certainly, in my opinion, his best live action performance possibly. And the fact that he did so willingly and like a professional, despite any sort of creative differences he had, and he was quite vocal about those differences, is pretty remarkable, the performance he gave us, despite those differences of opinion that he had with writer-director Rian Johnson. The other thing that I really appreciated, because like I said, I saw the film literally 12 times in my life. The more I watched it, the more I appreciated Rey in this film specifically versus the other films, because she's very easy to criticize. And I don't disagree that she's bland at times, and I don't understand her motivation as easily. But at least in this film, I can actually insert myself onto her, because she's frustrated with Luke and what he's doing. It's always in the back of my head. 5 planets have blown up, and part of that's on you, because you weren't there. You didn't try to make things right or anything. And even when Luke lies to her and eventually comes out with the truth, she's still like, "Why aren't you helping? Here's your lightsaber." She doesn't care about the past. She doesn't even care that he lied. She's like, "I'm giving you the chance at redemption," and he still refuses. And I'm on her team. It was the first time I was like, I'm really getting Ray, because she's getting me. I feel like we're on the same page here. Get off your butt, go and help the people who need you. Go and help your family. Go help the people who believe in the things that you believe. Go and at least attempt an apology with Kylo Ren or something. Do something, and that's something that I really appreciated. Somehow, Rian Johnson was able to take Rey and have her be somebody that I can relate to in the sense that she's frustrated with this guy who's supposed to be a lot wiser, is supposed to be a lot more centered. And those are the two aspects that I really enjoyed of the films, regardless of the things that I disliked, and I disliked them deeply, is that Luke and his performance top notch. And Ray and I, we finally had something in common. I felt her frustration. So that was something that was interesting for me upon revisiting the film several times.
All right. And now we're going to be moving on to the next question. But real quick, hey, Aaron, what is our time at? Did you hear me?
What's our time at?
So we started at
Got about 10 minutes there.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. So keeping up this pace, I think we're doing pretty good. What do you guys think?
Let's just keep moving forward.
All right. So question number 7. What are its worst aspects? Complete opposite what we just talked about.
Okay, I don't think that Poe and Finn, originally in earlier draft, Poe and Finn were going to go to Canto Bight together. I think that would have worked much better for both of their arcs. As it was, both times, especially in Finn's arc, Finn's storyline, it really pulls down the pacing of the film. Every time I'm with Luke and Ray, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I want to see what happens. I cut back to them. I'm like, oh, maybe it'll get better. And, it just, I like that they were all character driven. I like that it had an impact on the plot, but it was sometimes boring. It messed up the pacing. It had comedy, especially in Finn's story arc, that did not fit with Star Wars. I think, just speaking in terms of tone, and CGI, both the tone and the CGI of the horse chase was terrible. And this is one CGI that doesn't hold up. I think that's all I have for critiques, and at least in terms of major ones.
Okay, I agree. Canto Bight, just in general, the whole Finn Rose mission, and even when they get on the Star Destroyer, it's still kind of jokey, and they're using garbage cans to cover up a droid, which is like, I don't know. It kind of feels like a stupid thing to do because everyone on the ship is going to know what a garbage can looks like. But whatever. It's supposed to be kind of funny, and it kind of does look like a droid, to us. But I would say just kind of the opposite of what Jed said to the last question. It kind of challenges a lot of canon. Just the whole light speed ramming, or the force projection, or can't think of anything right now, but those are like two of the major things. I think it challenges that, and whether you can make it fit or not, I think that those things, plus the Luke Skywalker chains, really made it a very controversial film when it did not need to be that controversial. I think they could have kept the Luke thing, but doing new things that, just more fuel to the fire is all I meant. Like, why did you have to do that? But yeah, that's kind of my view, kind of.
For me, it may or may not surprise you, but for me, the worst aspect of the film is just that it was so divisive.
Yeah.
I could say a whole lot about Luke. I could say a whole lot about Leia in space. I could say a whole lot about, and I have, and I've said those things before to Jed, and anyone else would listen. Actually, Aaron liked the film, but over the years he grew to kind of see things my way. And it was the initial arguments that came out of this, whether it was me personally or on the internet or on YouTube, it was just sad to see, especially grown men who loved Star Wars, just being divided on one film. And it was the first time for me and for all of us because, we were kids when the Phantom Menace came out. And there was that sort of divisiveness about the Phantom Menace that I think is similar to The Last Jedi. Actors got trashed online, and I think that's despicable regardless of the film. And bullying is never okay. So that's the thing that I really dislike about the film. It's not necessarily what the film did, it's just the fact that it's divided people, and people are so angry. People who like it are angry, people who don't like it are angry. And it's like, and that's kind of the point of this discussion, is to be like, you don't have to be that. I didn't like being that guy. It was a waste of my time. So that's the thing that frustrates me the most about the film, is just how divisive it turned out to be. And that's the thing I dislike.
All right. And going on to the next question, I think this is a great follow-up for this last one we just talked about. What criticisms do you respect? And go ahead, Jed. I think you are starting off first again.
Yeah. I will say the criticism that I think I respect the most is just the depiction of Luke. Luke, speaking for myself, he was my biggest hero growing up, more than any superhero, more than many of the people in my own life. I wanted to be like Luke Skywalker, and then to see him grow up to be a miserable old fart who is depressed and is not taking action like he should is it's a big pill to swallow. And even for me, who ended up loving it, it took some time for me to get on board with it, and then it took even more time for me to love it. But I totally get why anyone would, not just it doesn't work for them, why they would hate it, why it would go against everything that made them love Star Wars in the first place.
All right, go ahead, Brendan.
Well, I don't know. I guess I respect anyone's criticism. That's totally up to them. But like, I guess in the way, if I agree with criticisms, I don't know. I guess they're all kind of valid to a certain extent, but it's just like, how far do we go and just repeating other people's criticisms? Like, oh, that's another nitpick. Something I noticed when I would defend The Last Jedi when it first came out, I was kind of defending it, and Aaron, like Stephan said, Aaron dropped off and he was on Stephan's side, and I was kind of the last one in in the Mead family that was really defending it. And I noticed that when Stephan was at that moment of like, oh, I just hate it, he wasn't happy, I wasn't happy, that I noticed that the criticisms were turning into just nitpicks. I was like, well, you could do the same thing with all the other movies if we criticize, the lightsaber fights, for example, or if we criticize the dialogue, we can easily go to the prequels or even the first movie ever made. Some of the dialogue's like, what the fetch? So, and, people turning to the dark side so easy, or people turning to the light side so easy. That's always kind of been the thing. So I notice if you just don't like a certain aspect of a movie, it's very easy to nitpick and get into all the little things. I don't respect those opinions as much because all the movies are flawed. Some are better than others, it's true. But, I respect the opinions that, like, the reason why you really don't like it. Is it really just because of the light speed ramming? Because if Luke was awesome in this movie and, blah, 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 and he was in it more actively in a hero manner, would you really care about the light speed ramming or the lightsaber fight? And you still might care, but not to the point of this is also a reason why it's the worst movie of all time, So, yeah.
Disappearing dagger. No, I'm kidding. I'll stand by what I answered the previous question. The most fair criticism that I respect is that it's divisive. I think that that's absolutely correct. And that's one that I not only respect but agree with. So, yeah.
All right. And now we're going to move to what criticisms do you disregard? Oh, I forgot to transition it. All right, now everyone can see it. What criticisms can you disregard? Do you disregard?
I mean, personally, I can just say any that if someone thinks that something is a problem in the movie,
sorry, Jed, you cut out there. Can you?
Oh yeah, it's just I think if somebody has a problem with a movie, that's fine. That's totally fair. if I don't agree with it, it's, I disregard it. I don't disregard their opinion, but that's not something that I agree with. It's not something that I feel. I think, to be brief, I think one of the biggest things that I do disregard is stuff that Brendan was talking about, where it's like, these people, they'll have problems with like, oh, with the choreography here, or this line there, or this lore thing there. I kind of disregard it for the same reason that he does. Is are we really going to do this? Or, like, do we really want to play this game with every movie that comes out? Because one, no, because that'd get boring real quick. But also, if we do, we're going to ruin every movie ever.
Yeah. Yeah, it just comes down to whether or not you like the movie, I think. If you like the movie, you're willing to push back the corny dialogue or the bad romance in episode 2 or whatever. I like the prequels, and I just rewatched them and I was like, yeah, I get why people hate these. But at the same time, I really like the story that they're trying to tell. So I'm willing to push back a lot of those things. And since we're talking about The Last Jedi, I just don't think about this movie too much anymore, because I think more about Rise of Skywalker, as I talked about earlier, because that's the one that really ruined it for me. And that's for other reasons. But yeah, I'm willing to look past like light speed ramming like that. They kind of did explain it in Rise of Skywalker, like that's a 1 in a million, but how did she know she's going to be able to do it? But it's just like, whatever. Okay, whatever. How did Jar Jar Binks get a 30 droid kill streak? How did he do that? I don't know, but he did. So some things I'm just willing to look past. So.
Well, there's usually a criticism that Rey is a Mary Sue and is therefore uninteresting. I think personally she does lean more towards the Mary Sue-ness. However, the idea that she's not interesting in this film, I actually do disagree. I think she's at her most interesting in this film because she is challenged, because she goes through difficulties. And again, I found myself relating to Rey, like I said earlier. So people who say that she's not interesting, specifically in this film, I tend to disagree with them. I actually think, it was interesting. Whether you like it or not, or you think it's well done or not, is totally different can of worms there. But I disregard the idea that she is not interesting.
Robert?
Okay, yeah, sorry. I was adjusting my mic. Awesome. So the next question is a kind of a two-parter. We'll go ahead and read the first one, and then we'll go ahead and read the second part of it, and then we can go basically do a full circle with all of it. So for the first part of it, it's how can people reach common ground on this movie? So go ahead and we'll start off with that part, and then after we loop back around, we can do the next part of the question.
I think one of the easiest ways is to not only respect others' opinions, but find cases where you share the same opinion about something else. Like something that, to talk about a different topic, Stephan mentioned the other day, watching the new Lord of the Rings trailer, which we won't go too much into, but this idea that Galadriel is a warrior now. And he's talking about how he understands that, may be accurate or according to the lore or whatever. But just from his knowledge and understanding of Galadriel from the Lord of the Rings films, feels antithetical to everything that is in there. And he talked about how that is something that I had spoken about with Yoda in the prequels, especially Attack of the Clones, and how, I understand it, I get it, but it feels antithetical for everything to me. And so I think a good way to come to common ground is, if you can find something where like, I feel that way about something else, then you can say, I disagree. I 100% get where you're coming from because I felt it before.
Yeah. I think it's just not taking it too seriously. It is just a movie. It does matter to us because stories matter to us. But, and that really does sound kind of like kind of hypocritical coming from me. You know, we're on this whole movie podcast thing, you know, but in the end, at the end of the day, you know, the movie doesn't determine, you know, if your tummy is full or if your family is happy, unless you let it, you know. It can make your day happier, it can make your day worse. But you get to decide what your conversations become. Ryan Johnson made it semi-difficult for people to talk about this movie civilly if they disagree on it. And he, like I said earlier, he put a lot of fuel in the flame. So I think it's just taking a step back and really looking at each other and just having a conversation without making it personal. And or just don't talk about it at all. It doesn't need to be a big deal. Like we've come to the point where, you know, we're talking about it and we're all alive. You know, we don't all have scars or bruises from or emotional scars or bruises now. We might have some scars from previous conversations, but we're all good now. So I think just try to be civil and just try to understand the person that likes or dislikes it. And, you know, just ask yourself how much you really care about it, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like the theme is just respect, you know. For me, just and I tend to root for underdogs. Jed's very much an underdog at this point because, you know, Robert, Aaron, and I, and occasionally Brendan will have our own criticisms, critiques of the film. But again, as I've observed Jed and I've, you know, watched things he's done, obviously it's important to him, and I've really tried to push on the brake, you know, before engaging in a conversation, bashing on the film, to sort of say, well, hang on a second. You know, this is important to him. He enjoys it. Why would I try to take that away from him? I know I'm not going to change his mind. So what's the point? Is it to learn something, or is it just to make myself feel better and really feed into that tyrannical king who has to be right about everything? Versus we're all fools and we can become better.
Mm. Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of, it's important to Jed. I don't have to bash it, and you know, and you can have and something that is a positive aspect of the film is that I've learned a lot from Jed as a friend and as a brother. You know, I've learned how to challenge some of the things I've thought, and that's something he just does in general. Is, you know, sometimes I'll say something and he'll challenge it. Sometimes he'll say something and I'll challenge it. And I've learned to do that respectfully without saying, you know, you're just stupid or something, which is a common thing I would do as a child and we would do in general as a family. And that's something that I really respect about Jed, is that he challenges the way I think, and I'm allowed to challenge the way he thinks, and we can do so civilly and respectfully. We don't always accomplish that, but that's a skill that I feel like Jed has taught me as I've roomed with him, and also as we've discussed this film specifically. So that's something that's been a positive from the film and from my relationship with Jed.
Yeah, as to go off what you said earlier about Jordan Peterson, you know, having this discussion, or this discussion in particular, but others as well, they can be amazing experiences to learn and grow. They can be very fun, but you're not trying to win. You're trying to be right. You're not trying to change someone's mind. You're trying to find out, why do they think that way? And you want them to know why you think this way. It's not about trying to win. It's trying to, okay, what is right? Let's find it together. And so, you know, this movie, I know a lot of times it's, you know, to use a Star Wars analogy, I want to give in to the hate sometimes. I want to, you know, like, no, you know, random person on the internet, you're wrong because of this, or don't you understand? But that's not the point of Star Wars. It's no. Listen to them. They may be wrong for X reasons, but their opinion won't be wrong.
Sure. Yeah. And it's okay, like, just to clarify, my points earlier, it's okay if you don't like the movie just because it might break canon to you in certain ways.
Yeah, if that's what's important to you, then
Like,
who are we to say you're wrong?
yeah, like if you think the light speed ramming is like that ruins the lore, therefore it doesn't work for me. Like I said earlier, it's to me mostly it's the overall story, and canon things do matter to me. Like if somebody can pick up a lightsaber and just be really good with it, then why doesn't everyone do it? Why aren't there more people like that? So that does kind of bother me, stuff like that. So I respect those opinions as well, and I think it's important to respect why somebody might 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 think that way, or think that, oh, it's just the acting. The acting is all that really bothers me, or whatever.
Mhm.
All right, now for the next part of this question, it is, what is the best outcome for Star Wars now?
Like in regards to The Last Jedi, or just Star Wars in general moving forward?
I don't know, Stefan, what
Yeah,
what
so there are ideas that are out there of not making the sequels canon. There are ideas that you to focus more on television. There's ideas that to do a whole new trilogy. There's ideas to just go back in time. You know, and I know that you will never make everybody happy. But what do you guys think? What's something that Lucasfilm can do to unite the fans? I think is
Hmm.
a better question.
I think one, I'm not a fan of decanonizing things just because you don't like them. I understand a lot of people were upset when Disney decanonized the material that's now Legends. I would say that it was never canon to begin with because of things George Lucas said. But even then, if it was canon, they weren't doing it because they didn't like it. They did it to give themselves freedom with storytelling. And so if people were to decanonize things from Star Wars in the future, if it's for freedom, I wouldn't like it, but I'd get it. It can't be because we don't like it. I think the best way is to do what George Lucas did with prequels, give more material to support it so that people will, they'll love the world building. Or maybe I don't like this about sequels, but this game that took place in the sequel era, I like things like that. And also, it can fill in a lot of the blanks. I know I've heard many people say, I don't like what they did with Luke's character, not because of what they did with it, but because it was just straight from Return of the Jedi to, oh, he's a depressed old man. So I think adding in stories where you can see him over those years, from Return of the Jedi to training Ben, the fall of the Order, all that, I think that would fill in a lot of things. I think just on a more general level, bold storytelling is, this is more a lesson from Force Awakens. If you make a movie as safe as Force Awakens that you have to do something as bold as Last Jedi Next, you've made a mistake in both cases. I think you need to keep doing bold storytelling, but some of the decisions here, this would have gone over a lot easier if they were, new characters, new story, all that stuff, instead of just the sudden left turn that it was. So I think having someone in control so that they're not sudden left turns, that will work better. Don't be safe and don't decanonize things. Just work with what you have, try and move forward. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, kind of have a Kevin Feige sort of thing.
Right. That would be helpful. And
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be him, but
Right.
because he's kind of this singular entity that has never been replicated. But trying at least to have the next Kevin Feige would be nice.
Yeah, or just a group of people, and you could throw on Ryan Johnson, Dave Filoni, just a group of people or something. I don't know.
Right. So people with more power than the Lucasfilm story group. They're just more there to say like, oh, you want an idea for a Mandalorian or a person who isn't a Mandalorian but wears Mandalorian outfits? Okay, use a Cobb Vanth, the Mandalorian season 2.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good point. So, and I think there is a place for like Ryan Johnson in the future. Just put that out there. He is a good director. I do think he did go a little too far. Just in terms
You
of
went too far in a few places.
Yeah, and not that, and that's coming from a guy who liked it, and now I'm just like whatever about it. So it doesn't bother me too much either which way. It's just that the effect that it's had on the fandom is just, I don't know. But we could still use directors like him who could come out. He doesn't have to play it safe, but just for goodness sake, just don't give him characters that. This is my opinion. Don't give him characters that are already established. Give him new characters. Give him a new story, new trilogy, whatever. That way, it's those characters and nobody gets hurt or whatever.
Yeah, that's what DC did with Watchmen. They bought a whole bunch of new characters. Alan Moore said, "Hey, I wanted to tell a story with them." And they said, "Okay, sure." Then they found out what the story was, and they said, "No, this is going to change how people look at the characters. Make your own story, or make your own characters and do the same story."
Yeah. And he most of the characters he worked with were new characters like Kylo Ren and Rey and all of them, but just the essential people like Luke. It's basically Luke. Leia, I don't think there's a big controversy for her. She's a general or admiral or whatever, which is fine, and that's fine. But in terms of decanonizing things, I don't think that would be good for me, but it wouldn't be good for everyone, So I don't think it'd be fair to do it at all. So I think the answer to that would be no. Maybe like what Jed was saying is, just put those stories of Luke and his process of being Luke to the Luke he is in the Last Jedi, which I might disagree with a little bit because Luke becoming grumpy old Luke may not be that interesting of a story. But I still think they should continue making stories of Luke, like in The Mandalorian, and showing him, and just to the point where it's before the sequels, and that way you can appease the fans who don't like the sequels, and they can just say, "Oh, well, Star Wars ended in Mandalorian season 8 or whatever," and then we just don't watch anything else after that. But still have it connected, still have Ben Solo in it, stuff like that. Just fun Easter eggs. And that way, everyone really knows that the sequels are canon, whether you like it or not. But just like the people who only like the original trilogy, they can just watch the original trilogy. They don't have to watch the prequels. They don't have to watch Clone Wars. They don't have to watch Rebels. They don't have to watch Rogue One if they don't like, So I think there's a happy ground there can be a happy ground for everyone.
For me, I agree that decanonizing is not the answer. For one thing, if they just get rid of anything that Star Wars fans don't like, then say goodbye to the prequel and possibly Return of the Jedi, because that may have been the first film that got flack not nearly as bad as Phantom Menace and Last Jedi. But it's where do you draw the line on where you decanonize things? Having said that, I am not opposed to animated shows that are related as a sort of a what if for the characters, and try new bold things. The other thing that I think would unite the fans is, who else tried to be bold and took risks? George Lucas. He did so with the prequels to mixed results, obviously. But I feel that he learned a lot from his mistakes, and he did respect the fans enough to, for instance, cut down on Jar Jar Binks in the next film. And then really we got a gem out of the prequels, which is out of all the fluff, which is Revenge of the Sith. So I feel that if they're wise enough to take criticism, not backlash necessarily, but just criticisms that say, hey, maybe they had a point here, and then build off of that and learn from them, we could get a lot of gems. And I think that those two routes, more animated things that could be related to the characters that we love, and also improving upon what has been given to be a big step forward for Star Wars instead of just taking 2 steps back.
All right. Any last comments? That was the last question.
Well, thank you all for the discussion. I feel it was everything I had hoped for and was respectful. which was a big thing for me. And to the audience, if you like this sort of discussion, we can easily talk about controversial films. We could do the Phantom Menace. We can do a number of films that people are split on, and we'll try to find things that because if we all talk about Captain Marvel, for instance, none of us liked it. So don't ask us to do that one unless you want to post questions for us as a fan of Captain Marvel and have a serious discussion and challenge some of our ideas. Go for it. But if you really like this sort of discussion and you want us to talk about some controversial films, then please let us know. I really enjoyed it. I don't know how you guys felt.
I thought it was good. I like being the moderator. Just throwing that out there.
I think you're very good at it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, Brendan.
I just saying I liked it as well. It was nice.
Jed, what are your thoughts? You don't feel attacked or anything, right?
No, not at all. I want to do this again. I want to be on the attacking side this time. No. But no, I don't mind being the odd man out and saying I'm the only one who likes this. But I hope to do this sometime next time where I'm able to I want to try and flex my muscles of work out those muscles of I disagree, but I want to understand more.
I have an idea. for the next one.
All right, what's your idea?
Stephan and I, we watched episode 3 last night. We watched all the prequels this last week.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about Rose and Jar Jar. Which one was more useful? And I was like, well, Jar Jar was a war hero. So that can be the thing. I'm the only one that thinks that. I think.
Brendan, I will die on that hill with you. I actually like Jar Jar.
He's a war hero.
Right.
He's a bomb bad Jedi.
All right. Well, in that case, now that you guys can finally see me, I've been locked away in a corner this whole time. But we're going to go ahead and sign off. You can follow us on Twitter and check out our other videos as well. And am I missing anything else? This has been Fandom Accords. That's the title we've given it. So hopefully we'll have more debates and stuff. And I think, is the plan that this would become a separate part of a show?
It's its own separate segment that we will do, maybe not regularly, but it will be a recurring segment.
So it's not like the main show, it's its own segment. So more debates coming your way. And is there anything else? Am I missing anything? I think I got it all. Oh, Aaron, hey, Aaron, hop in the camera. We need to see you. We've missed Aaron this whole time, too. Where was he at? Was he hiding in the corner, too?
He's right here.
Aaron! There he is. Hey, Aaron. All right, now you got all of us. Now you should feel satisfied. All right, we will see you guys next week at 7 o'clock. Remember, we do live stream every Saturday at 7. And catch you next week.
Yeah,
Bye!
Bye.
Wait, hold on, buttons. Now we're closing. Goodbye.